In this very quick guide, I'm going to show you how to use the Persuasion Wheel in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Why bother with Persuasion? Well, basically because using the Persuasion Wheel minigame in Oblivion will actually unlock certain content for you. I'm not talking about just getting a bit of extra information from an NPC that might help you with a quest, although at times that can be useful. I'm talking about how using the Persuasion Wheel can actually allow you to do things like unlocking entire new quests and giving you the ability to buy some of the better player houses. Yes, of course you can eventually get all of that through fame, but that requires you to have played the game for a significant amount of time and to have completed a number of main quest lines. Using the Persuasion Wheel will allow you to gain access to these things far earlier in the game, and the system allows you to explore the options of every NPC in depth from the very beginning, rather than remembering to go back to those NPCs later on, which you probably won't. So how do you actually use the Persuasion Wheel in Oblivion? Well, the first thing to know is that the skill isn't actually called Persuasion. The skill itself is called speechcraft, but the minigame that is the most relevant aspect of speechcraft is known as the Persuasion Wheel. Leveling up the speechcraft skill itself just makes the Persuasion minigame easier and less time consuming, and I'll talk more about that later in the video. For now, let's look at how to actually use the Persuasion minigame with an NPC. To start the minigame, you need to speak to an NPC and then click this item in the bottom left of the screen. This will bring up your speechcraft options, and it's the same for every NPC. You should now be able to see the Persuasion Wheel in the top left of the screen, and in the middle of that wheel you're going to see a number. That number is the current disposition of this NPC towards you. Disposition ranges from 0 to 100, with 100 being the highest disposition that you can achieve. The higher the disposition score, the more this particular NPC likes you, and that comes with a range of benefits depending on the NPC. That could be offering useful information, unlocking new quests, or as I mentioned before, even the ability to buy certain player houses. Check out my player housing guide for more on that if you're interested, it's in the same playlist as this video. To begin the Persuasion minigame, in order to raise the NPC's disposition, you'll first need to click Start, obviously. You'll then notice that there are 4 sections or wedges to the wheel that are labelled Admire, Joke, Coerce and Boast, and they're going to be filled up to varying degrees with a sort of yellow and orange bar. These 4 wedges represent the options that you're able to select for each round of the Persuasion minigame, and you must select all 4 of them in every round. What's important is the order in which you select them. That's where the yellow and orange fill levels come in. As you hover over a particular wedge with your cursor, look at the NPC's face. If it looks happy, that option will yield a positive result, as in you'll gain disposition with this NPC when you click it. On the flip side, if the face looks angry or unhappy, then you're going to lose disposition. There are always 2 positive and 2 negative options, and they should be pretty obvious from the facial expressions you see on the screen. Love and hate are particularly obvious, with like and dislike being a little more subtle but still pretty easy to distinguish. How full a wedge is at the time you click it will dictate how much disposition you're going to gain or lose. If the wedge is full, then you're going to gain or lose the maximum amount of disposition. Of course, depending on whether that NPC responds positively or negatively to that particular persuasion option. Again, you can look at their face whilst hovering over that option to easily understand whether they're going to respond positively or negatively, and to what extent. Which is important because love and hate provide larger modifiers than like and dislike. As I mentioned, you have to click all of the options in each round of the game. So obviously the trick is to click the positive options when they have the fullest wedges, and the negative options when they have the least full wedges. Each time you click an option, the wheel's going to rotate, so you just need to use a bit of common sense and think a couple of moves ahead to really maximise this. You may also notice that there's a bribe option, which you can use if you have a bit of extra gold and want to fast track things by basically buying some disposition. As mentioned previously, the Persuasion minigame becomes easier as your speechcraft skill becomes higher. Leveling your speechcraft skill allows you to unlock a free spin of the wheel, offers mitigation against negative disposition options, and reduces the cost of bribes. You're going to gain speechcraft experience for each round of the Persuasion minigame that you complete, and it doesn't matter if you gain or lose disposition during that round, you still get the experience. In fact, the only way that you won't get experience for a round is if your disposition score doesn't change at all. There are a few ways in which you can quickly level speechcraft, but the easiest is probably just spamming the smallest wedge on an NPC that you don't particularly care about. This will allow you to complete rounds really quickly without even having to think about it. And the reason that we always spam the smallest wedge rather than randomly clicking wedges is that by doing that you could accidentally push their disposition too high. If you do this, you're then going to be locked out of the game and unable to further your skill with this particular NPC because your disposition is going to be considered to be maxed. This is then going to cost you time having to go to another NPC, and it's just not as efficient. It's also the case that the NPC's disposition slowly goes down whilst you're playing the Persuasion minigame, so quickly spamming options will negate the effects of that as well. Honestly, I'd just use speechcraft with each NPC you meet and level it organically. It's far less tedious than immersion break-in, and that's especially the case if you're on your first playthrough. But of course, that's up to you. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully this video has been useful in teaching you the basics of speechcraft and the Persuasion Wheel. I have plenty more Oblivion guides on my channel as well as other games, so if that sounds interesting to you then maybe consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.